We are talking to Brad Bierman, the co-publisher of The Juice Online, which is part of the Rivals.com network. Syracuse is off to a 4-1 start, completely revamped the vibe and the passing attack of the program with new coach Fran Brown. The Orange are favored by, I think, last I saw, 3.5 points, traveling to NC State at 8 o'clock Saturday, ACC network. Brad, obviously it's a lot different, I'm guessing, with Kyle McCord at quarterback than the Garrett Schrader era.
Totally different, almost night and day. I say almost because, when Schrader wasn't hurt, he could be an effective quarterback for Syracuse, but nothing like we've seen in Kyle McCord, JC. Pro style quarterback. He has the strongest and most accurate passing arm I've seen in a Syracuse quarterback, in at least 15 years, going back to Ryan Nassib at 2010, 11, and 12. He's been the difference maker, obviously. Statistically, you see it. Syracuse's passing offense, one of the top in the country. McCord, one of the top in the country. And, Syracuse fans have been thankful for the gift they received from Ohio State ever since that transfer last winter. And the results have proven. This is an offense that can score through the air, had a little bit of difficulty on the ground, despite LaQuint Allen's success in the last couple of games. But also, the offensive line has been rebuilt, and that's the key to any success in the trenches. You can't succeed if McCord's not protected to be able to get plenty of time and to find his receivers and to get those playmakers such as Allen in the mix. So that's been the difference offensively. And Fran Brown's vibe, as you said, he's brought a completely different attitude to Syracuse football, coming from a championship pedigree program at Georgia, and it's been a breath of fresh air with a 4-1 start as a rookie head coach. Only hiccup, of course, being the late loss to Stanford, but won his first true road game, and this is the first time Syracuse is going to be playing outdoors this year, JC. So this will be interesting to see in what should be a great football weather night in Raleigh.
Not just on offense, but big picture, there's a lot of transfers that are able to be brought in to fortify different spots. You know, People like to say negative things about the transfer portal, but this would have been a very long and tedious rebuild if if Syracuse were playing by the rules of, say, 2018, with guys sitting out a year or not even arriving at all because maybe they wouldn't see a need to transfer. You know, how much has, the portal basically changed everything about what this year has turned into?
Well, it's completely changed it. I mean, the roster overhaul is there. It's completely changed the fabric of the program. And Fran Brown's reputation, of course, was the top recruiter in the country coming in. Well, that also applies not just to scholastic players, but now in the transfer portal era to those players. And starting with Kyle McCord and Fidel Diggs, the defensive linemen, those are the linchpins on both sides of the football. And then to your point, he knew he had to improve the depth to be ACC caliber because it wasn't, quite frankly. And that's why Syracuse had so many problems in the month of November under Dino Babers the last 5 seasons, because injuries are going to come in football. They're going to take their toll on most teams' rosters, and you have to have second and third string players that are going to rise up to be able to perform, to a better level than Syracuse was getting in the month of November from its reserve players. So Brown's brought the transfer portals in. He certainly hasn't missed a beat from a recruiting scholastic standpoint either. And that kind of roster overhaul, JC, is the reason why this team is 4-1. Quite frankly, I don't know if a team under Dino Babers holds on or comes back in overtime to win at UNLV last week. And likewise, I don't know if Syracuse, beats Georgia Tech in the second game of the season. Both wins over top 25 ranked teams at the time. That's something that Syracuse hasn't done in quite a number of seasons.
Sure. And when you look at it, you know, one player that NC State fans are very familiar with is Oronde Gadsden. He did want to stick around. He had a huge game against NC State 2 years ago. NC State offensive coordinator Robert Anai knows him extremely well. Missed last year with an injury, and now he's back. It's funny. I remember debating with people going into last year before he got hurt that he isn't really a tight end, shouldn't be listed as a tight end. Basically, everything about him is a jumbo wide receiver matchup problem. How good is Arondé Gatson?
Well, Gats is, going to be an NFL player, no doubt, with the pedigree he has and how he's bulked up and gained weight and strength since last season. But the saying at Syracuse is he wasn't going to come back unless Brown delivered him a quarterback. So Brown did his part in bringing McCord over from Ohio State, and that made the decision easier for Gatson. And again, in this day and age of NIL and players receiving compensation, it's a pretty cushy life when you're in college getting paid six figures to attend class and play football. And, before you want to think about moving on to become a professional player and, of course, make a lot more money. But Gatson's really developed even more so with the Fran Brown's tutelage, wide receivers coach Johnson, the assistant coach, and he's really stepped up. And I think the other thing is, though, that's really made him more valuable is the other weapons that McCord has around him this year. So he doesn't have to rely as much as he did on Gatson 2 years ago in the Syracuse offense.
Sure. Part of that is Trevor Pena has really stepped up this year. Meeks arrived from Georgia as a quality college wide receiver. Um, some of the younger receivers, Hatcher had the big
Hatcher.
touchdown against Stanford, a big, deep threat guy. So it's not just, it's pretty well balanced, which is why you could see how McCord is, I want to say what, 30. Well, he's completed at least 27 passes in all 5 games. So, and I'm sure he's probably thrown for 40 passes in all 5 games. So they're definitely airing it out. Um,
I was watching the fourth quarter. I wanted to make this point, JC. When I was
yeah,
squinting watching the fourth quarter of the Wake NC State game, I could have sworn I was watching LaQuint Allen in the uniform of #1 in Wake Forest, Demond Claiborne. Those two players are very similar. Both have the same number, similar running style. Both had great success in the fourth quarter last week and leading their teams to victories. So I was thinking that at the end of that game, as Wake came back and said, "Wow, Claiborne, Allen." That's going to be an interesting comparison this week to see
sure.
how, and in the fourth quarter. I mean, Syracuse, as I said before, under Babers, they may not have come back in the fourth quarter of games that we now see in a completely different mindset with Fran Brown. And just thought it was interesting. I thought C.J. Bailey was taking, a couple quarters to get going there. And if he had a little bit more time, may have been able to produce a victory there. So I think this is going to be, as the over-under suggests, 52 and a half, a high-scoring game. And I really do think this is going to be a battle of which defense can stop the other team's offense, special teams being the intangible, and will come down to the fourth quarter.
And it's a good way to segue to the defense. Diggs has brought a pass rush ability from Texas A&M. I liked Lewis at corner. I'm fascinated that a young kid like Barnes has been able to hold up as a freshman at the other corner. Is it Grant or Gant?
Grant,
Safety out of Buffalo as a
Grant.
transfer. So, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a great Syracuse defense, but can they be resistant enough?
They can. Deuce Chestnut's really strengthened him coming back from LSU. Cinco Clark also been #5. Elijah Clark has been very steady. These are South Jersey players that Fran Brown has the utmost confidence in the defensive secondary. And Jaden Bellamy's had another pick for return for a score this year as he did last year coming in. So the depth there has certainly been improved. In the new defensive mode here from Elijah Robinson, too. Linebackers, Barron and McDonald all over the field in kind of a different role than we saw in the 3-3-5. But it's about the pass rush, and Syracuse has to have consistent pass rush. They have to control Bailey as a dual threat quarterback and respect him for his passing arm, too.
Sure. And then just as an overview thing, obviously you have followed Syracuse football for a very long time. I picked up Syracuse football, we'll say mid 80s. So Coach McPherson, Coach Pasqualoni, been some ups and downs. Two things. What is it like when Syracuse football is good again? And then two, what is it like to see all this conference realignment, knowing the history of Syracuse football used to be an independent, and they were in the Big East, then they find a home in the ACC. What has that been like to kind of see that from a distance happening again?
Well, really interesting, and you make a couple of neat points, JC. Syracuse used to be a football school, and I'm talking going back to Coach Ben Schwartzwalder, the national championship in '59, and then through the '60s, all the great players, Floyd Little, Larry Zonka, ending when Coach Ben's reign ended in '73. Frank Maloney stepped in at the end of the era before the Dome, and he
But
struggled.
let's not
Finally,
forget
had a
Jim Brown.
yeah, well, Jim Brown, of course, Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, Floyd Little. I was just going from '59 up. But yeah, and then Frank Maloney pre-Dome, struggled until the first year of the Dome, and then Coach Mack, took 7 years to get the program back to contend for a national championship in '87. So by then in the '80s, Syracuse, because of Jim Boeheim in the Big East, was a basketball school, and Jim Boeheim used to say it himself in the '80s, "Hey, we used to be a football school. I know we're a basketball school now. Well, will Syracuse ever get back to being a football school?" Well, Fran Brown would be the best candidate to try to lead that program back to some sort of resurgence. But it makes everything all the difference because football still runs college athletics despite Syracuse's basketball success. And there's nothing like it. When the dome is filled up now, it's reduced capacity, 43, 44,000. But when that's filled, the Loud House has its moniker, and it's just been a tremendous home field advantage. So it means everything for Syracuse football to be back because it's been 25 years, JC. Let's face it, then they've really not been relevant on the national stage except for a couple years in '01 and '18. That's really been it. So to get the recruiting going, which Fran Brown has to get the class of 25 now, 26, et cetera, moving forward is really important. As for realignment, well, I think Syracuse fans are realistic. They know that the bigger schools and conferences really are going to control things. They're going to go along for the ride and hope for the best. And we don't know how that's going to shake out by the end of this decade, but there's going to be movement. I think we both can agree on that to some extent. And it's just wait and see. Hope for the best. Just do what you can do in the ACC. Let's face it, 12 years in the ACC, Syracuse has struggled to win on the road in the regular season. Haven't been anywhere near even contending for back when the divisions were set up to play in the championship game. So I think it's first things first, a winning season. People are thinking 8 victories. Let's be realistic. Somewhere in that vicinity. Go to a nice tier bowl game and win it, and then see what happens next year.
And then I figure I could wrap it up on this kind of tongue in cheek, but NC State basketball is now playing at the Lenovo Center, third name change. Obviously, before that, decades and decades and decades at Reynolds Coliseum, which is on campus, near and dear to NC State fans' hearts. And, sometimes college basketball or football can all be about brands. Everybody knows Reynolds Coliseum. People know certain stadiums and some places, all across the country. They can turn on TV and they'll be like, okay, that's being played at such and such place. What would you say is the percentage of Syracuse fans who still call it the Carrier Dome and will always call it the Carrier Dome?
Believe it or not, JC, it's small. It's not a huge portion, and
Okay,
mainly it's almost an afterthought, forgetfulness. It's really been known as the Dome.
sure.
Through its 44 years and being, only on campus, Dome Stadium, it's so unique being, right there on the campus, not part of some athletics complex, a mile or so down from the main part of campus. It's really been the Dome. Most media have integrated right to JMA because it's a big company within Syracuse, and they've made a lot of splash and noise about getting 5G technology in there for the spectators and also it hasn't been that big a deal, especially into the second and third year of the name change. But to most folks, it's the Dome.
Well, hopefully NC State will have Carter Finley Stadium remain Carter Finley Stadium for years and years and decades to come. which is where the game will be played on Saturday. For people who want to check your workout, anything on the Juice Online or on your Twitter or socials that you'd like to promote?
Just that we'll have game coverage as we do each week in our recruiting Monday through Friday and sujuiceonline.com, syracuse.rivals.com.
Okay, we are talking to Brad Bierman. State is hosting Syracuse, 8 o'clock, ACC Network on Saturday. State's 3-3, Syracuse 4-1. One program seems to be surging. NC State has to get off the mat after a very difficult loss against Wake Forest. Should be very kind of a fascinating game, and I think you're definitely spot on bet the over, maybe. But this is JC Zumbo of the Wolfpack Central, and thank you for taking some time and addressing some of the key issues going into the game Saturday.
My pleasure, JC. Enjoyed it. Thank you.